Hey, this is weird. So this is my first real experience with Facebook Live, but I'm just going to give it a whirl. And I was really trying to think, like, what should I talk about? And I put out there the, asking people for questions, what they might actually want to hear me talk about, or questions they want to hear me answer. And they're great questions, and I will actually get to them because I really love the questions. But what I most wanted to share about today was there's kind of two pieces to it, and it was in a coaching session that I was giving. I don't know what the best word is. I had a client. I was the coach. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before. Maybe it was the day before. And the two people. First of all, I want to talk about actually the insight that I got, but I want to do that second. And first, just speak to the experience of seeing something new. That I was being with this client, and he was a man, and he's a father, and we were talking about having kids, and I'm a mother, and so I have a lot of experience parenting. I have a lot of thoughts about parenting. I have, anyway, I have a lot of ideas, and I have this direct experience of what it is to be a mother, and a direct experience of what I want, or how I see that role, or maybe how the role of a father plays into the role of a mother. Anyway, I have all this stuff that comes from my own perspective. But here I was, like, really putting my attention on my client, who was a father. And something in that moment where he was sharing, I was just like, oh, I was getting something new about what it is to be a father, and to hold on a more consistent level the masculine role as a parent, the masculine role of the parent. And first of all, it was just beautiful, like, just for in myself, like, to go, oh. I got paused. So I don't know if that cut off or what happened. Sorry about that. But first, I just want to speak to that experience of getting something new. And I think that happens, or it's more likely to happen, when we put our attention on another person and get more curious about their experience than about our thoughts about their experience, or our experience in relation to their experience. It's just like, God, what is their experience? And it was very, I guess the reason I want to say that, it was very nourishing for me to have a new experience like that. And so I recommend it. Maybe that's why I'm saying that. I recommend it. And then what it was, and this speaks a little bit, I don't know, I could talk forever about these things, but it speaks a little bit to some of the questions that people asked about the masculine and the feminine. And what I got in that moment was that I think for all of us, to some degree, chaos and failure are a challenge. These are like two of the big challenges just of being alive, is like learning to deal with chaos and learning to deal with failure. I see some people have joined. It's nice to know that somebody's watching. And that the part of each of us that's going to have the most challenge dealing with chaos and failure is probably the masculine part of us. That the more feminine part in each of us can swirl around in chaos more easily, and the more masculine part of us is sort of like, what's all this happening? And I had this about myself actually recently, where I was like, oh, it's not even just what we would call the masculine and the feminine. It's probably even bigger than this. But what I got in that moment was like, inside myself, I have at least, these four different parts, which are my more mature masculine, my more mature feminine, my more immature masculine, and my more immature feminine. And my immature feminine is like, it's like kind of hysterical. That for me, each of us is probably a little different. Mine is like hysterical. It's kind of like freaking out all the time. And then my immature masculine comes in and is like, if everybody would just shut up and do what I say, then everything would be okay and I wouldn't have to freak out. And children, this comes back to the beginning, which is about being a parent. Like children, whether they're male or they're female or they're anywhere on the range of that, like whatever body they're born in, children are sort of inherently chaotic. They're like, so we could call that the feminine. It doesn't really matter, but they're chaos. Like children are chaos. And it's why they're such a great teacher in life, is because they just bring all this chaos. And now it's this dealing with like, how am I actually just going to deal with chaos? There's the specifics of every situation. And then the other piece is like, we just fail. I mean, maybe it's just me, but what I get from other parents too is really this sense of like, it's this constant experience of failing to be a parent. First of all, I never complete anything. There's just no completion. So it's sort of like, there's never that experience of like, dun, 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 I did it and I succeeded and I won. And I'm constantly doing it wrong. I'm either getting complaints or I'm not getting praise or I'm like seeing that it didn't have the impact I want. And so I was talking to this client and I was just being with him talking about being a parent. And I had more compassion for the experience of being a father than I think I have had in the past, because I'm very aware of the challenges I have as a mother. And really being with him, putting my attention on him and my curiosity on him, I was like, wow, he's having the same challenge, which is basically, how do I be with chaos and how do I be with failure? And I don't know, I'm noticing that I'm wanting to, like, I'm afraid I'm going to say something that people are going to argue with, but whatever. The way it occurred for me in that moment was like, as a man, as a more masculine man that he is, that's harder for him. Like, that is probably the experience that most men who identify as more in the masculine spectrum that's like the hardest experience, chaos and failure. And as a parent, that's what comes up all the time. Can you be with this chaos? Can you be with this failure? And it just had me, I guess more than anything, it had me just have more compassion. Like, oh, it's really hard to be a dad. And that is then the practice. There's all the particulars. How do I deal with this situation? How do I be a good father to this child? How do I deal with this particular issue that's coming up? But the broadest sort of spectrum is, how am I going to relate to chaos and failure? And again, I'm not saying that that's easy for like us feminine women or us mothers, but I really got the distinct challenge as a man, being with chaos and failure. And to me, this is basically where I'm going to end, but to me, that's just where practice comes in. Both practice in, dealing with our children and dealing with chaos and failure, but it's where our personal, you could call them spiritual practices, yogic, not necessarily physical yoga, but yogic practices, energetic practices, whatever practice actually supports you in building your capacity to be with chaos and failure is, first of all, as a parent, just going to serve you. I mean, that's what I come back to all the time. It's like, can I pause? Can I breathe? Can I relax in this moment at all? And then ultimately, it's what serves us in being with chaos and failure in life. So, I'm not quite sure how to end this live session, but I guess it's just as an invitation is, do you have those practices in your life? And if not, can you think of just one? Can you think of one that that you actually feel drawn to or that you know would support you? If you do have those practices, are you doing them? Because I have them, but then sometimes I don't do them, right? They don't actually work unless you do them. If you're doing them, are you doing them regularly? Or if they're not really supporting you, are they the right practices for you? That's my question. And this was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. Ciao.